Hi, how are you all doing? You holding in there? Lots of information, right? Well, now we're going to do a little bit more. Hopefully you can take it in. I'm going to try to make it easy and digestible for you. Digestible is the interesting word here. I'm from New York originally. I've been living in Valencia, Spain for almost 20 years now. And for all of that time, everyone in Spain tells me we have the best food. The best food is right here. And then I come to Italy. And I can't say they're wrong, but we have been having a very nice time eating in Italy. I'm going to have to sew together 2 skirts before I leave, and it's all worth it. So I'm really enjoying Italy, love being here. I know a lot about the American school system. I know a lot about the Spanish school system. What I really need to know is more about the Italian school system. So that's what I'm going to ask you to help me with. I'm here to talk a little bit about applying phenomenon-based learning. And just saying that is a mouthful, isn't it? So I'm going to help you feel a little better about it. But I need some information. How many of you are vocational teachers? Could you raise your hand? 1, 2, just a few of you. The rest of you, you can relax a little bit, because from what I understand about Italy is, first the vocational teachers are going to be asked to apply this in their classes, and then later you are. So right now, everyone can relax a little bit and sort of explore what elements of phenomenon-based learning you like and you feel comfortable with. And then later, when they put a little more pressure on you, you can try more. But today is just exploring some ideas. Now, we heard from Michael before that just saying some words makes you feel more confident. So how about if we try saying phenomenon-based learning? All right, first, you're just going to mouth it. Say it with your lips, but without any sound. Can we try that? It's not so bad, right? All right, so now let's try to say it all together. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, phenomenon-based learning. Can you do it? 1, 2, 3, phenomenon-based learning. Feel much more powerful already, right? Okay. So, as I was saying, I live in Valencia, but not in the city. I live 10 minutes north of the beach, and the beach is beautiful. I have a dog who's a big dog, who's a water dog, and she loves swimming. And every day, she wants to go swimming. In the winter, I'm not crazy. I'm not going to go swimming with her. But she won't go in without me, and she's always looking at me, trying to get me in. And the water looks beautiful. I know that it will be wonderful once I get in, but I'm cautious. So when we're getting into March, April, I will take my shoes off and put my toes in. And I sort of explore the temperature of the water. And I know she's looking at me saying, it's time, it's time. But I'm a little cautious. So I take my toe out, I realize it hasn't fallen off, I'm still alive, everything's okay. So the next day, I'll put my feet in and wade around a little. And she's still behind me looking and saying, it is time, we have to go in. But I need a little more time. I don't want to be pushed too hard. So if I feel comfortable, the next day I'll go into my knees, and then every day a little higher, right? Until I finally dive in. But at my time, when in my comfort zone, and then she's really happy. She loves it, we both love it, but little by little. Now, phenomenon-based learning is the same thing. It is a big bite to chew off. So all we have to do is go slowly, stay in our comfort zone, find out how much we're willing to do every day, and not more. Even if the government is pushing us from behind, we need to be comfortable, correct? Because when we get nervous, the class doesn't work really well, does it? We have less patience for our students. All right. So having said that, let's explore a little bit. And just so you know, I have been a primary teacher. I've been a secondary teacher, and I've been at the university. So I'm speaking from experience. And the really nice thing is, with Oxford and with some other organizations, I'm going into the classroom and working with the teachers. So it's not as if I've been just researching and learning theory. I'm still in the classroom. Again, not in your classrooms. So you correct me if I'm assuming something that's not the reality. Deal? Excellent. Okay. Now, one of the secrets of phenomenon-based learning are these 2 words, what if, why? Because these 2 words open up a whole possibility of creativity, of conversation, of collaboration. I'm going to give you an idea. Most of these talks, Carla and Michael and myself, is about your students. This question is for you. Let's just say we go to a party, and the usual conversation, I'm saying for the American point of view, and Americans, we're very curious. We'll ask anything. There are really no limits. And I've been told by people in Spain, Donna, you ask way too many questions, a little too personal. What's your name? Where do you live? What do you do? Do you have children? Are you married? Maybe in the reverse order. But what if I asked, and this is true because it's been opening up a whole bunch of conversations, what if I proposed this question? Now there's more. You ready for this? And we're going to talk about this at the end. What object could you bring? It has to be packed. So start thinking about this, because at the end, I'm going to ask you for what would be a relationship breaker. Not just the weekend, that's it. No more. Okay? But just using what if opens up a whole subject. It's kind of fun, isn't it? So the other thing we want to do in these conferences is we want you to leave with resources, but also use each other as resources. We want you to feel as though you've gotten to know someone new. Now, you probably know the person next to you because you sat down with them. We'd also like you to get to know the people in front and behind you. So I'm going to ask you, even though this is the last one, you're going to leave having a new best friend. You're going to believe me. I'm going to ask you to turn around and shake the hand of the person behind you or in front of you, tell them your name, and ask them a very personal question. Now, don't worry. I'm going to give you the personal question, okay? So you're going to turn around, exchange names, and ask them what their favorite ice cream is, okay? Can you all do that? Great. What kind of ice cream? Nice choice. All right, everyone has a new ice cream buddy. You know what you're doing afterwards, before lunch? All right, now that you might have a little comfort zone because you're going to use these new best ice cream friends to answer a couple of questions. But beforehand, I know this is a big subject. I know it sometimes gets people, not sometimes, most of the time, gets teachers nervous because we feel as though we're being pressured to do something we are not ready for. So I'm going to give you something, an inspirational saying. They're very inspiring, right? Now it makes more sense. What does it mean? Nothing to be scared of. We are teachers. We are human. We are teaching humans. Things work really well some days. Things work really badly other days. It's okay. We teach our students that making mistakes is not failure. It's just a mistake. We need to remember that also. It's just we reflect, we figure out how we can make the next day better, and we go on. All right? So can we remember that with these elements of phenomenon-based learning? Now, you all have the A and B sheets. So what we want to do is fold it in half so we can either see A or B, all right? And I'm going to give you two options. Now, I want you to commit to one. Even if you think both of them, I want you to commit to one and hold up either A or B if you think that's phenomenon-based learning. Bless you. Let's see, A or B, which do you think a phenomenon is? A topic, event, or fact, or geographical feature? I see A's, I see B's. Again, just commit to one of them. Don't worry, there's no failure here. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is turn around and find someone who does not have your letter, and I want you to spend 15 seconds convincing them that you are right. Okay? Go ahead and find someone with the opposite letter. All right, have you convinced the other people? Yes? No? All right, there's a reason why, yes or no, you've convinced them. Shall I show you the answer? It's both of them. Now, why did I do that? Why did I give the same, different answers, but they're both correct? What was the most important thing here? There is no wrong. To discuss, to use. So what I've given is if you go back to the slide, you can see is that I've given you the academic language, I've given you the concept, and now you can use that to talk a little bit. And that's what you can use with your students. It's a nice way to introduce the subject. It could simply be a scaffold, if you know the term for scaffolding, which is introducing. So the fact is, it's both. You both feel justified and validated, correct? All right, we're going to use these again, so don't put them away, but I encourage you to use them. So the difference between a phenomenon-based learning project and a project. Well, all I can tell you is a project, it's a project with sparkles. It has a lot of different elements. So I know I go into the classroom and teachers tell me, but I'm already doing projects, I don't need you here, go. I go in because the directors ask me to go in. So one of the hardest things for me, especially since I am from New York and we don't have a lot of patience, is patience. So I tell them, I understand, you think this is a project. Let's see if we can add one element in here and give it a little more sparkle. And sometimes they'll say yes. I'm going to give you some examples. But this is really it. I'm going to show you what a phenomenon-based learning project has included. Now just breathe, please. Don't get nervous. Or I would say, remain calm. These are all the elements, but we're going to go to the very basics. We're just going to talk about 5 of them. So remember that this is all included, but you don't have to deal with it yet. And a lot of these you are already doing. We're going to go through the structure here, and you're going to recognize some of this. You're saying, I already do this. Perfect. If you already do some of these, maybe you could introduce one more. If you don't, maybe you could introduce one. Feel capable? I bet you can. So again, objectives. I'm going to tell you 3 objectives that I've come up with. How many of you share objectives with your students every day? Wonderful. That's really positive. How many of you share objectives with your students before every unit? Oh, nice. That's really positive. All right. They say that if we share objectives with students, it's the same as if I'm sharing objectives with you right now. We feel more in control, we know where we're going, it helps us feel a little more involved. So I didn't have the chance to co-create these objectives with you, which is what we can do with our students, but hopefully you'll be interested. The first one, we're going to just briefly talk about language acquisition and why that's part of the phenomenon-based learning structure. The second objective is outlining the big, broad phenomenon-based learning, the one that probably makes you the most nervous because it's a big chunk of time and it involves a lot of people. However, what we're going to really focus on today is this, adapting that big structure just to maybe a week, 2 weeks, that's it, okay? So as you're listening, just say, I don't like that, but that one I could adapt tomorrow, next week. Should we start with language acquisition? Thank you, because we are. All right. Biologically, there are some biological functions that we're going to develop no matter where we are. Language, on the other hand, has to do with society. It's a skill. It's something we learn when we're with other people. When we teach subjects, and even in our language classes, we're always teaching subjects, correct? To make it interesting, we're talking about things. Probably most of you have moved past just exercises in grammar. But what we're doing here is we're building on knowledge. We're just helping our students know more about each subject. With language, language is an expression. Language is very personal. Language makes us nervous when we're expected to express ourselves in another language, in a second, in a third, in a fourth, right? We feel like we're fairly intelligent in our home language, but if someone asks us to express the same thing in another one, we feel like we're being judged, we feel like we're not our best, we feel out of control and out of our comfort zone, correct? So we need to remember that's true for us, that's true for our students. And especially what Carla was saying, the teenage brain, it's always feeling judged, it's always feeling a little nervous. So we need to be a little compassionate. So a lot of you may already know this, but we're just going to go through the stages of human language acquisition. At 1 month, babies can distinguish between sounds. At 6 months, they begin to make their own sounds, and if you teach them sign language, which some of you may have done, some of you may have seen, my brother did this, you can communicate a little more easily with your young children. At 12 to 18 months, they use holophrases, which are one-word sentences. And those of you with children either remember or know that that one word can be very powerful, right? And at 3 to 5 years, their sentences resemble more of an adult structure grammatically. So by the time a child is 6 years and 4 months old, they have a very solid grammatical structure of their home language. 13,797 hours. Why do I put that up there? It's very important for all of us to remember. These children, we go to Finland and think, oh my God, that's incredible, they're speaking Finnish. Or they speak Hungarian, or they speak German, or they speak Italian. They have been studying the language for these many hours. They're eliminating a little bit of sleep. And they're learning in organic ways. They're learning when they eat. They're learning when they take a bath. They're learning when they play, when they talk to their parents. And then we expect them in school, and we expect ourselves to learn another language 3 hours a week. If we can remind ourselves and remind our students, all the anxiety may go down a little bit. And this is where phenomenon-based learning comes in. If we can remember this and maybe make some of our lessons a bit more organic, a bit more meaningful, a bit more critical, then maybe our students will be a little more engaged and feel a little better. This is our reality. This is what I grew up with. This is what you probably grew up with. This is what we did. Maybe this is what we do. This is what we were taught. So now, if this is what you still do, you could consider changing. Consider it. Nobody is telling you to change. What I'm suggesting is to think about it. How many of you have this structure in your classroom? All the students sitting in rows, and they're all looking at us all day long. Yeah. That's nice. We have to make sure that we look fairly good every day, right? So nobody is asking you to change this either. But this is if this is our reality, I've seen teachers just ask the students to turn around so they can work in pairs. Sometimes you can change the desk. Most teachers say, I'm not changing the desk. They won't let me. Okay, let's just work with this structure. And so let's go back to a formative evaluation. If you believe that I've told you enough about language acquisition and why that has to do with organic learning and phenomena-based learning, hold up A. If you think you need to know more, hold up B. All right, so I see a lot of Bs. I see some As. I see some A's and B's. This is very important information for me. We don't have time to do more, but that's good for me to know. If you're the teacher and you ask a question like this, or you can simply ask a grammatical structure or a mathematical problem or anything, and see a lot of your students are saying, no, I don't know it enough, then teach them more the next day. Go back to the unit. If most of the students say, yes, I understand, you don't need to repeat the next day. So it's a very important function of formative assessment. All right, so that's it. That's all we're going to do about language acquisition for the moment. We've talked about this. You feel like you're ready to go on to the big structure of phenomenon-based learning? You're just going to breathe through this. We're all going to support each other. All right. So I'm going to give you 6 final projects of phenomenon-based learning. And these are projects I've worked on with different groups, with teachers who all work together in different countries, in Mexico and Finland and Spain. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. And what I'd like you to do is just write down the common denominators you hear about them, all right? So the first one, for instance, this is called the two-sided identity mask. And these students made masks, and on one side, they wrote down which periodical element best defines them and why. On the other side of the mask, they wrote down how society defines them, how their families, social media, their friends. They put the masks up in the school, invited their classmates, the younger students, and people from the community in, and they explained their masks. Now, this was a combination of the English teacher working with the chemistry teacher and art and technology. The second one, how are we different from other animals? Here we had students who had to figure out how humans are different, what are the distinctions between them. They studied cave paintings. They reproduced those cave paintings in their classroom. They researched and answered the question about the differences. They had experts come in, and then they asked their families and people from the other parts of the school. They gave them a tour through the cave paintings, and they shared their conclusions. So again, this is a combination of the English, the art teachers, and social sciences. Here we have an economics class. The English teacher worked with the economy teacher, and these students, each group produced 2 pages. The first page was explaining an economic concept in their own words. The second page was explaining how or applying that concept to real-world issues. So for instance, natural disasters, the economic consequences, AIDS in developing countries, things like that. They put the book together, they published it, they sold it in their school and in the local libraries. This was a combination of using experts from the publishing companies, English teacher, the economics teacher, and IT. 2 more. This one is, how does the work of this mathematician affect my life? They had expert mathematicians come in, explain how different mathematicians had developed concepts that affect them. They made a panel and talked about how, if that mathematician hadn't lived, how their lives would have been different. They worked with the public speech teacher, with the English teacher, IT, and social sciences. And then the last one is, what if I had to emigrate to another country? How would my life change? Something very relevant. So they researched the history of emigration, the consequences of it. They did a public broadcast in their school and in the local radio station. This was IT again, the English teacher, public speaking, and social sciences. So, you've heard about 6 projects. I've gone over very quickly. But who can tell me, can you shout out one of the common denominators? Sorry? Different subjects, intercurricular, cross-curricular, what else? Student-centered. Something the students produce. Real life. What else? They did research. Okay, you're catching it. So I'm going to give you some more. You may have already written this down. Cross-curricular, multicultural, global perspective, collaborative, student-centered, critical thinking, and something personal. This is what the phenomenon-based learning project usually includes. Now, you probably are already doing this. You just may not realizing you are. So what we're asking for phenomenon-based learning is just to switch a few things around so that this is more obvious. Now, we're going to go through those 5 elements one by one. This is the one we're going to spend more time on, though, because this is the easiest one to implement and apply in your classrooms. And before we talk about the inquiry question, we're going to take a little pronunciation break. Because I always forget this, but you may notice that I sound much different than Carla and Michael, right? There's no better or worse. There is a difference in accent, and that's important. We need to get used to each other the same way as you need to get used to the both of us. So the British would say, it's really just this, a lot of times the stress on the accent. The British will say enquiry or inquiry. I'll say enquiry or inquiry. It's the same word, and it means the same. So really, these two, you're going to see them interchangeably. It just depends on what you like more. I happen to like the E more. Okay? We're set? Great. So what do inquiry questions involve? They help involve our students a little more. There's no one correct answer. It's thought-provoking. We want our students to reflect, and we want it to be connected to the real world. That's not so bad, right? Okay. It also includes the three most powerful words to begin an inquiry question are how, why, and what if. And you saw in the beginning that using what if opens up a whole different world. I'm going to show you why these three words are so powerful. And a lot of you are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, the pyramid, nice colorful pyramid, right? Lower order and higher order thinking. This is very similar. Lower order and higher order thinking questions. Now, the tests show that most teachers, and I am guilty of this as well, most teachers, we stay in the lower order thinking questions. It's much easier to grade. What we need to do is make sure our students can answer these, but help push them up to the higher order thinking questions. And I understand the minute we do this, it makes us nervous because there is no one right answer. We need to do a little more work to validate their work, right? But let's just see what these words do, the power in our classroom. Let's start with a yes or no question, and we're going to take cyberbullying as the topic right now. Have you ever been a victim of a cyberbully? You don't have to answer, but I'm sorry if you have. Okay, one person saying yes. It's yes or no, that's the end of it. Is that research? Not really. Let's try who. Who are usually victims of cyberbullying? Well, once they research, there's a profile. The studies have already been done. That's it. So let's try what. What's a cyberbully? Well, there's one definition. Doesn't require research. There's one answer. They need to answer those three questions to be able to answer something a little more sophisticated. So should we try how? Now it's getting a little more interesting, right? It requires research. They're going to have to talk about it. There's no one right answer. They need to know the information from the lower order thinking questions and include it in this answer. And now we're going to go to what if. Now we're using proactive information, right? So to me, this is really fun. It's a lot more work, so if you can't handle this, don't worry. Maybe in a week, maybe in a month, maybe starting next year, you could introduce something like this. But why haven't I used why, and why does it have an asterisk there? I'll show you. We need to be careful with inquiry questions because sometimes they're not what we think they are. We could say, why did the cyberbully turn on the computer? Well, why? They wanted to bully someone, right? Or we could ask this question. No, I'm telling you already, it's not appropriate question. Why? Why is this not well written? She's saying because I'm assuming, or I'm asking the students to assume that it's harmful. So I've made the judgment. I'm telling them it's harmful. I've given them the answer already. So can you take 2 seconds? I'm going to give you 10 seconds with your new ice cream buddy or the person next to you. Could you change this using the word why to make it less a leading question? Can you try that? Michael. Can you see? I want to see if you can ask someone for their answer. Can you find someone to give an answer in the mic? Yeah. All right, do you have something? You have an idea? Anyone want to share one? This is not easy, is it? Now, Michael has a microphone. If someone back there wants to share a question, an answer. All right. I'm not sure if the mic is working, so we'll see.
Why are social networks supposed to be harmful?
Why do we have social networks as opposed to?
To be harmful?
To being harmful.
But
Does that work?
Are supposed to be, not they are.
Why might? If we use might, it's also a powerful word, right?
Why are they supposed to be harmful?
Why are they supposed to be harmful? So we're assuming they're supposed to be harmful, right? Thank you very much. Anyone have another option? Why are social networks harmful? Isn't that? Oh, you need to speak louder. I'm sorry. Shh. Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew.
Why might?
Why can the improper use of social networks be harmful?
Why can the improper use of social networks be harmful? All right. Thank you. All right, so maybe what we need to do is take the word harmful out, because I think that's where the judgment comes in, but you're thinking, correct? All right, now I'm going to show you my option. You have another one?
Why do some people think that social networks can be or might be harmful?
It's that last word we need to get rid of, right? I hear it changing. I hear it changing. It's a little painful still, right? All right, but thank you. Go ahead, Andrew. Right there. No, right behind you, right next. Yeah. And then I'm going to show you.
Do bullies use social networks?
Why do bullies use social networks? That's a new one. Thank you.
Because they can be harmful.
Leave the last part out.
This is the answer, but I mean, they have to find the
No,
answer.
stop. You were doing really well. Okay, thank you. Why do cyberbullies use a network? Beautiful. What I put, and this doesn't mean it's correct, it's just one option. You tell me if this is better. Is that any better? Some people say the word controversial is still a bit judgmental, but it's a little better. Okay, thank you. So, inquiry questions are not easy. Once you get them, the students get involved and you feel powerful. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to try one, but let's go on for a little bit first, and thank you. So, I'm going to show you what using an inquiry question can do to a classroom and not using one. And again, this is not a judgment. If you like the idea, use it. If you don't like the idea, just think about it for a while, all right? Most of us, if we have this, either in our English books or the natural science teacher, will ask the students to learn this way. Sounds familiar. This is how we learn. This is how we usually ask our students. Now, what if we introduced an inquiry question like this? And I love this one. Kind of fun, no? They need to know exactly the same information as before, but it's fun now. Let me give you another example. Again, if you're an English teacher and you have to teach something about social science, or if you're a social science teacher, the normal way we learned and the way our teachers and we as teachers ask our students to learn is like this. Now, as I said, I've worked with teachers, and these are actual questions that we have introduced in the classroom. And I just have to tell you that this is from one particular teacher who was very resistant. She's in a school where the directors are adamant about all the students, about all the teachers working with projects. And she knew the end of the year was coming, and she hadn't used any project. And she sees me coming down the hall almost every day, and she's thinking, oh, my God, I know I'm going to have to work with Donna, but I don't want to. So finally, towards the end of the year, she said, okay, all right, fine. This is what I have to do. I have this whole unit where there's a long timeline. I have to teach it every year. Every year, the students don't like it, but they learn. I give them the exam, and that's the end of it. How can you change this? It was a challenge to me. And she was thinking, there's no way you're going to do this. So I went home thinking, I better do this well. So this is what we both came up with, and you tell me what you think of it. What we did is we found this template for these balls that had 6 sides of them, and they drew each of the students worked in groups. And for, I think, 4 centuries, they had to draw the images first of each century, the most important things, using their books. So this all has to do with using the books you already use. They had to look in their books and find the images that they felt would represent that century, and then they hung it from the ceiling and they put down 5 key words. 5 key words that would help them recall all the paragraphs and all the information. And then at the end, what they did is, in sort of a relay race, all of them would run up to one of the balls, and then this happened to be in Valenciano. And in Valencia, just so you know, most kids don't speak Valencian, but they have to take it as a subject. So these are students who were not comfortable speaking Valenciano, didn't know how to do it well, but they prepared. They had to go up, figure out which century it was, use the academic language, those 5 words hanging down, and speak fluently for about 2 or 3 minutes. And they did it. Afterwards, they would tap their partner, another one would go up and talk about another century. And the teacher was standing here the whole time going, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. She was wonderful, she let them do it, but she was not convinced. I have a video showing that they did it beautifully. And at the end of it, she said to me, okay, fine. So each of them knows 1 century. How am I going to find out if all of them know all the information? So I said, you're absolutely right. How are we going to know? And what she did is, in the end, she gave the same test she always gave, and all of them passed. She actually called me on the phone and told me this. It was the first time the next day she looked me in the eye, and she said, okay, I'm convinced. But not only was she convinced, she said, you know what, I'm going to talk to my husband. And her husband is another English teacher in the school. And he's one of the most traditional teachers I've ever worked with, and I've worked with traditional teachers. And he was, for 2 years, I've been going after him, asking him to introduce a topic. And he always finds a way to avoid me in the hallways, not look at me, and he doesn't want to do it. But his wife said, I'm going to convince him. And the next day, and this is a reflection of how sad my social life is, he came up to me and asked me to help him. It was the most exciting moment of my life up to that point. So I did, and I'm going to show you the project that he and I worked on. So I'm saying I understand how nervous you all can get. We just go a little slowly with it. This is another one where, without an inquiry question, we're all familiar with this, right? With an inquiry question, and they did it, and they were wonderful. So they did the puppet show, and they also had to hand in an essay explaining what they did. It's another teacher who was resistant to it, who was forced by the directors to do the project. Afterwards, he was convinced. Now, obviously, the inquiry question is not everything. What we do is create a rubric. And a rubric in English is different than a rubric in Italian. And hopefully I'm going to say this correctly. Carla's going to correct me if I don't. I believe that when I say a rubric, you would say grilla. Sound good? All right, and I'm going to give you an example of that. Now, this is another English teacher who said to me, this is the unit coming up. All the pages were the traditional textbooks, which are wonderful. They were well planned, but he wanted to use an inquiry question. So I'm going to ask you to do it. Now, this is not the minute to say, I'm out of here. I'm going to go and leave because I don't want to do an inquiry question. This is your opportunity to try, and you have support here. So I'm just going to give you 1 minute. See if you can use this. The keywords were about success, about happiness, having goals, and they had to use the past and future tense. So can you use the person next to you and just try to formulate an inquiry question that would cover this? Go ahead, try 1 minute. Try how, why, or what if. It's not that easy, is it? But it's fun, it's a challenge. All right, now, ideally, in a workshop, you'd have a lot more time to do this. We have lunch, we have children to pick up, we have things to do. So I'm going to show you what I did with him. This does not mean it's the correct answer. There are a lot of correct answers. I'm just going to show you what we did, and you tell me what you think. So what the students had to do, and again, we used a rubric to make sure all the criteria was there. Griglia. Griglia. Thank you. They had to explain, they had to think about what they wanted to accomplish in 10 years from there, and then figure out what they needed to do to get there. One was a podcast, themselves interviewing themselves in 10 years, and the other was a message, an email to a future employer saying why they were the perfect person for that job. So we're giving the students an opportunity to think about themselves and what they wanted to accomplish. And for a lot of times, these students who don't think they have a future can figure out what they want and actually start thinking about getting that future. The messages that we read were pretty inspirational. So this is one way we can change just a little bit of what we're already using. Not so bad, is it? All right, so let's go back to the structure, and we're just going to go into a couple more of them. The mini lesson. Teachers say to me, then when do I teach? When do I get up in front of them? We're used to being in front of the students all the time, aren't we? If the students are working in groups, what am I doing? Our work is before we walk into the classroom, but yes, sometimes we need to teach and make sure everyone has the same knowledge base. So we talk about mini lessons, and say we want to introduce a video. Before the video, we need to remember that we've seen the video at least once before, maybe 10 or 15 times before. This will be the first times our students see the video. So what I always recommend is that you scaffold first. And scaffolding, again, is just a dynamic activity to introduce the academic language, the concept, or the images of what they're going to do or see. So I took this video and did some print screens of different definitions of cyberbullying, made it into a puzzle. We gave different groups the puzzle, smaller pieces, so it's more difficult and challenging, and they had to put it together. Now, of course, the frame is easy, but then they had to start reading the definitions to make the pieces fit. Once they've done this, then we show the video. And they realize that once they're watching, they're seeing the same images and the same definitions that they've already interacted with. So the tension, the anxiety goes down. They've already learned a lot of the academic language, and they can assimilate more information. Once we show the video, then we need to give them formative assessment. And again, most teachers ask me, how can I incorporate writing? Well, we can incorporate writing as formative assessments. Simple questions for them. We need to know that what we think they learned from that video, they actually learned. A lot of times we assume a lot of things that are incorrect. So this was the mini lesson. Now we can go a little faster because research and collaboration, we just need to give the students time to research and collaborate. And they do. Now these were older students, these were 16-year-olds, and they have learned all of their life until now to sit and listen to the teacher, take the test, and forget it pretty much at the end. They did not want to think. They did not want to do the project at first. This was different for them as it was for the teacher. So I understand that, and the teacher recognizes that. In the end, however, the students did say, it was more interesting, it was more fun, we did learn at the end. We didn't want to do it at first, and then they did. It won't work the first time. It won't work really well the second time. The third time, you're more confident, your students are a little more comfortable, and it begins flowing. So when teachers get nervous the first time, it's normal. Just have patience with yourself and your students. The last part of the structure, well, there are two more, public presentation. And normally, and I've understood in Italy this is the same way, where we ask the students to get up in front of the class and just speak about their research, about a project or something like this. It's high anxiety for them. High anxiety for us too if we have to memorize and talk about it in front of other people. With phenomenon-based learning, they go up with their peers and they have the support from the rest of their group. And public, if we ask anyone else to come into the classroom, the minute students know that someone outside of their class is going to see their work, the quality goes way up. So even asking people from who aren't in their class to come in, or the families or whatever, again, you might be already doing this. If you are, yay. If not, maybe you could think of inviting someone else in. And then the last one is reflection on learning. Again, this is an easy part, but important. One of the most powerful tools we have as teachers is to reflect on our teaching. And we can help our students figure out how they best learn by reflecting on their learning. So reflecting on learning can be as simple as asking them different questions. And these seem simple, and yet they're powerful questions. So a lot of times, what have we done comes at the end. But a lot of times I will encourage a teacher to say, after she's given the instructions, or after he's given the instructions to each group, I'll say, could you ask them a simple question? Have them answer, what are we going to do? And they say, well, why do I need to do that? The truth is, we assume they know exactly what to do, but when they say, answer this question, what are we going to do? Most of the time, the students look at each other and think, I have no idea. So then we have to decide, do we put them together and share information? Do we try to give the instructions ourselves again? We need to address it. So there is a wheel, and I'm happy to make this available, Andrew, to the teachers. There's a wheel of these type of questions before, during, and after a project that are very powerful and help the students move ahead. And now, this is the point where I'm going to help you understand a little more how you can adapt this yourselves to the material you were already using. This is the husband of the teacher who is resistant. This is a very traditional teacher, lovely man, lovely, very resistant to new ideas. As we all are, if someone's telling us to do something we don't want to do. So far, you don't have that problem. He showed me his worksheets, and what he does every day is give the students worksheets, they do them, they take the test, and for him that works. They do have a fairly high level of English, but it's monotonous, and he was willing to try a change. So we went back to the cyberbullying. I took this and I said, all the cyberbullying questions we had before were from this project. And this was the inquiry question. You're familiar with this already, right? And what I'm going to show you is the rubric we created. Because a lot of times in our mind, we know exactly what we're expecting from our students, and when they turn it in, it is really different. Well, if we don't make it clear, we have no right to say, I'm sorry, this is unacceptable. So the rubric is our chance to become crystal clear about what we're expecting and make sure our students are clear as well. So when I say a rubric, this is what I mean. And we worked on this together, and I'll just go through a little bit of it. First, we have the inquiry question. You're a school counselor and need to give students advice on cyberbullying. How can you help victims confront their abusers and then take back their power? Well, some of you are acknowledging the fact that you have been bullied by cyberbullies. This would be interesting, right? We need to take back our power, and our teenagers do as well. In the rubric, we have language objectives and content objectives. So you as English teachers are key, crucial to this. If we don't address language objectives, the studies have shown that we don't help our students move forward. We also need to include content objectives. You see that it's from the textbooks that you're already using. You say in Unit 2, that's what you're going to work on. Here, the main topics of Unit 2. You're not changing any material. You're just looking at it from a different perspective. The next part of the rubric is being very specific. Give me 5 examples of an abusive text message. So teachers will say to me, okay, so I'll put in some examples. Great. To us, we may be thinking 4, 5, 6. Our students are going to think of how many? Maybe 3 at the most. So if we're expecting 5, we need to put the number 5 in there, 10, whatever. We're giving them links that they can find. We're telling them what pages of the teacher's book or the student book to look at. A lot of times I see teachers, and I know I've done this too as a temptation, go get your computers and now start to research. So they find pages that are way too sophisticated for them or that are not appropriate. We're saving a lot of time if we give them the links. There's nothing wrong with it. These are all the criteria we're expecting at the end. And then we need to put in the formative and summative assessments. If the principal comes in, if the director comes in, if the parents come in, we need to know how to explain what they've learned up until that point. So maybe something as simple as sharing a Google Drive, maybe giving them quizzes if that's your comfort zone. And then the thinking frameworks, which was I was telling you about, I'm happy to pass this on to you, asking them questions before, during, and after. What's the task? What do we understand? During, where can we find resources that best help us answer this? What have we done? What can we improve next time? We're making them responsible for their own learning and the process itself. We're not their parents. We don't need to be on top of them all the time, but we are their facilitators. We need to help them move forward. And we also need to focus on team building. We assume, because we're adults and we've been spending years learning how to get along with each other, some of us are much more successful than others. So we need to make sure our students learn how the best skills of doing collaborative work. And reflection. Next time we can improve by, the grade I deserve is, the studies show, and teachers always say, the studies show that if we let our students give themselves a grade, the learning goes way up. Now, this does not mean we have to give them the grade they say they deserve, but they need to be able to justify it. So even if the only thing you take away from today is that's a big jump. But they have the rubric in front of them, and they'll say, I deserve a 10. You use 1 to 10 here in Italy? Yeah? Okay. And you can say, all right, you've done everything. I see that. You're right. If they say, we deserve a 10, and you say, but there's a lot missing here, this element, and this element, they have to say, I understand, you're right. So we make sure that we've gone over this rubric carefully, because this is what we can decide later. We make sure we do scaffolding to help them assimilate new information. We give them time to do research and collaborative work. We give them the opportunity for public presentation so that they know that their message, their personal work is being seen outside of the classroom, and we give them time for reflection. So that's the basic structure. And the last thing we're going to talk about is this what-if question. Now, what I'd really love is we can get some answers, because this actually happened to us. We have spent the past 4 days talking about this. This is something Michael shared with us. And for 4 days, we've been talking about it. And trust me, we are going to continue talking about it, because it's a fascinating question. And this happened to a friend of his where she was invited on a romantic weekend, and her partner brought one thing that not only ended the weekend, she said, I'm going home and I ain't going to see you again. What was it? So what I'd love to know is what would break your relationship? What would end your relationship? What would your partner pack that would say, you know what, this doesn't work for me? Can we, Andrew is over there. We have some microphones. Would anyone like to share what would be the end of a relationship for you?
A fishing rod
A fishing rod. Yeah, that's not good. What else? Sorry? A football. Are we talking about American football or Italian football? It doesn't matter because it doesn't involve you, right? Right. Okay. What else?
Games console. A games console.
A games console. Yep. Not very romantic and not very interactive. What else?
I would say his mother's picture.
That would be a relationship breaker.
A former partner's picture.
A former partner's picture. Yep. Okay, anyone else dying to tell us? Okay, so in this these are perfect, and you might keep thinking about this, and the whole idea is it does make us think and reflect and share ideas. This is what this person's partner brought on the trip. Now, it's funny because my reaction and Carla's first reaction, our first reaction was, excellent. He's going to iron, perfect. The key word here is she wanted a romantic weekend. Romantic is not ironing your shirt so that they're really, straight every day. So just think about it. It's very funny. The point here is the what if question. So again, what I'd love you to take home for today is if you can just add one of the elements into your classes, you can have a little sparks, a little fireworks in your classroom. I encourage you to be brave, and thank you so much for considering these ideas.